it's every interaction. What behaviors are we highlighting? What behaviors are we rewarding? What are we calling out when there's issues? How do we handle when there's failures? There's inevitably going to be failures. And it's, well, how do we show up when that happens, right? And how do we take accountability and make it safe for folks to understand the best paths to success is to own those mistakes and learn from them and acknowledge them and go forward. So we spent a lot of time talking about culture, and it's been an interesting journey through COVID and post-COVID, and everybody's working through. I think Cardinal always had such a strong culture, and it's been really interesting to work through the dynamics.
Welcome to Multifamily Excellence, the podcast that explores the ever-evolving world of the multifamily industry. I'm your host, Jonathan Treble. In each episode, I'll spend time with a world-class multifamily leader to learn how they're continuously pushing boundaries for excellence. You'll get to hear their perspectives on career progression, leadership philosophies, and strategies for operational excellence. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Excellence. This episode is brought to you by my company, With Me. With Me makes people's lives better every day through convenient, technology-enabled solutions for the multifamily industry and beyond. Today, I am excited to have Cara Athmann join us. Cara is the Chief Operating Officer at Cardinal Group companies, a leader in multifamily property management and investment. Cardinal currently manages more than 50,000 units, including both conventional and student housing. Cardinal is an NMHC Top 50 manager and jumped 3 spots last year alone with 15% year-over-year unit under management growth. Cardinal currently has over 2,300 teammates nationwide. Cara, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk today.
So, Cara, there are many firsts for your appearance on the show. You're the first native New Jerseyite to join me as a guest, fellow Jersey person. Hello. And you're the first multifamily boomerang. We'll talk about that in a bit. But you're not the first guest to attend a small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. You joined the ranks of Jennifer Sachiokis, the president of Western Wealth Communities, who graduated from Westchester University, not too far from your alma mater, Bucknell. So thank you for coming on the show. Excited to talk about your career. Why don't we start way back at Bucknell? I'm sure you were intentional about what you studied there, and I believe I can see the tie between your physics major and joining consulting out of college. Can you talk to us about your early decisions to start in the workforce and what drew you to consulting?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, it wasn't super deliberate to make that jump from physics to consulting. Really, I just always loved math, and so had a great physics teacher in high school, and so kind of started me down that path, and had some great professors at Bucknell and just really loved math and science throughout kind of my whole childhood. And then as it was time to graduate college, I was debating about grad school, I was debating about financial services or consulting, and really just kind of fell into consulting and got into it and just absolutely loved it. It was a super great way, I think, for a recent college grad to just kind of get thrown into the fire where, you get a couple weeks of training and off you go. You're sold as an expert to implement new software across a variety of industries. So it was just a great, just a great learning experience for me. And for me, being a learner is like one of my top 5 strengths if you follow Gallup Strengths Finders. And so it just really fed that need for me to just learn about all these different industries, learn how they're doing things, how they're attacking different business problems. And for us, we were introducing technology to a lot of companies that had very manual processes. And so it was a really interesting way where you had to ask all the right questions to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then it was up to you to figure out how to make the software really enhance or optimize those business processes. So just a great way to start a career and just learned a ton about a lot of different aspects of businesses.
I can relate to that. As a software project manager in my early career, I had to interface with a lot of departments and ask a ton of questions to make sure we got the software right. It was probably similar for you with your clients.
Absolutely.
Can you share with us how you first heard about the multifamily industry and how you ended up entering the industry?
Yeah, so in my early years of consulting, it was kind of that traditional road warrior consulting where, I think my first assignments were like the Sunday to Friday, commuting from New Jersey to Seattle. Like any good 22-year-old, you're more than happy to spend the 6 days out of your seven of a week, on the road and working with different clients. And so when I was ready to get off the road and was like, all right, I want to actually, be in the town where I'm living, and started looking. And so the software that I had gotten recruited out of college to go and implement was Siebel software. So it was a CRM software. It's kind of the software before Salesforce really came out. But their SaaS product really just took over the industry. But so that was really my skill set of I knew Siebel software, I knew how to implement that software, and had done that for a variety of different projects. And so at the time when I started looking for a job, Aimco had built kind of their whole property management software was built on Siebel. So what they did is they ended up hiring a ton of ex-consultants to come in and continue to build that product to meet their changing business needs. And so it just kind of happened across them and started working there. And it was just a great experience with them. Met some phenomenal people and really just a different pivot for my career. Where in consulting, right, you're always you're coming in, you're building something, and then you're moving on to the next project. And so AIMCO, a lot of great lessons learned as far as the long-term ramifications of what you're building and the technology decisions that you're making, and how do you get that, rolled out, really adopted throughout the organization. So just a great learning experience for me working with that group, and just some great folks there over the years.
I bet. And was that what precipitated your move to Colorado from New Jersey?
No, I actually moved to Colorado pretty early in my consulting days. So I was based in New Jersey for maybe about a year. And then the consulting company at the time decided our Siebel practice was going to be regional. So it was either they were going to move me to Chicago or Denver. And I was kind of like, I'll pick Denver. So off I went. They moved me out here and came out here and just absolutely loved it. But again, kind of the youthful, I wouldn't say a super deliberate plan of mine anyway, but just kind of went with the flow and just absolutely love the lifestyle, the people out here. And so it's been a great fit for me.
It's a great state. I spent 2 years there during COVID and loved it. And I could see myself moving back there. So I think you could have made a worse choice in a city to live. So let's talk about that Aimco experience. How did you find the multifamily industry compared to, let's say, some of those other clients of yours that were also needing to update their processes with technology?
I'd say Aimco was interesting because it was the first time where Siebel was being used as really the operating platform, right? So in the past experiences that I had, it was much more focused on, kind of call center or CRM functionality that we're building out. So kind of either a sales or a customer service part of the, kind of the overall business, where at Aimco was a really interesting experience for me because I got to understand just the more core of the operations of how we were operating. So some of those things were just a lot different from a learning experience perspective, and got to work through some different workflows around, they were big in redevelopments at the time. So a lot of the technology that we were building was around that. Well, how do we get the software to interact? And it's understanding, as we're taking down units or taking down whole buildings and working that through all the different handoffs and kind of the whole management of the importance of, having units down the least amount of time possible, right? So you weren't just kind of, eroding any revenue opportunities, as well as just some overall, just variety of projects over the years, but just a few that kind of stood out as far as really just getting in and understanding kind of the core of the operations a lot more than maybe in the past consulting experiences that I'd had.
Got it. And was Aimco your first experience managing personnel under you?
Yeah, probably, because in consulting, it's, it's always a little bit matrixed in consulting, right? Where it's less of that traditional manager relationship where you're deployed on different projects for maybe 6 months to 18 months. And you have often I was a project lead, but you didn't have really direct manager experience there. So Aimco was the first time where I was the traditional manager, which was great because I definitely didn't know what I didn't know when I was starting out as a new manager. So it's just a great experience on that side too, of figuring out how to lead people and how to have, kind of performance management conversations, and just a ton of great experience that I learned there.
Yeah, I think anybody who's been thrust into management can relate to those early stumbles with managing people. When you think back to that, what were some ways that you learned how to lead people in those first few years of doing it?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of good lessons learned there as far as, how far do you go into like your personal preference versus what's really important as far as giving feedback and figuring out the right level of detail there. And even thinking about it, some of the stumbles where you have to give somebody hard feedback and they know it's coming and you're scheduling it for 7 days in the future, and then all you've done is created all this anxiety for the person by the time you meet. So just thinking about really flipping your perspective as far as, the other person on the other side of some of those conversations, and how do you set that up in a way where they can hear it and it's, as direct and constructive as possible without, being entirely anxiety inducing, or how you minimize that. I think is super, super helpful. And just all those lessons learned that you learned the first time you're leading people, and you get that very quick feedback as far as how that's going and how those actions are perceived.
Yeah, a lot of it is trial by error, right?
Right.
Did you have some good mentorship as you evolved as a leader over the years?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I think that's the great thing about, I feel really lucky throughout my career. I feel like everywhere I was, there were just a few people that you kind of collect and just respect a ton, and then able to just understand how they go about things and just really watch. And so throughout my career, whether they were a direct leader of mine or just somebody that I worked really closely with, even if, they were more in like the business owner side and I was more on that, kind of the project delivery side, just had some great, great leaders that I got a chance to work with and just learn a ton from. So yeah, I feel really fortunate in that over the years. Just the different folks that I've gotten a chance to work with and stay in touch with over the years.
Excellent. In the pre-show, you mentioned that your foray back in consulting after Inco was also a turning point in your career and had its own set of lessons. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So when I was ready for something different, and it was kind of at a time in the business cycle where there was starting to be more consulting firms that weren't the full, 100% travel type roles where you could be in town, right, and target clients that have a big presence here in market. But spent 9 years at my consulting firm RepGen prior to joining Cardinal, and that was where I'd say I really transitioned from manager and kind of like earlier, manager director type roles up to more of a senior leadership position. And so that was where I'd say really, really just learned how to be a leader at just a different level and take some of those, even just from a high stakes conversations with clients where you're talking through big projects and when you hit different barriers there. So just a tremendous learning experience there too, as far as being on that side of things and having sales responsibilities and all that. Just a huge growth opportunity of learning all different parts of the business, and being a leader and serving on the senior leadership team and working through some of those decisions that are more impactful to the entire firm.
Cara, Cardinal has had incredible growth over the last 6 years that you have been there. I think the stats that I looked at showed Cardinal's portfolio under management grew fourfold from about 13,000 units to over 50,000. Can you tell us a bit about the strategy Cardinal has employed? Because at the C level, right, as I'm learning as a company grows, it's really all about strategy besides being a good leader. And in a very competitive industry that we all work in, where it can be tough to gain market share, what strategy did Cardinal employ that you would credit to the incredible growth you've had?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways that we think about this. There certainly are, multiple players in property operations, and a lot of great companies out there where Cardinal has tried to be specific with who we are. It really is this blend of culture and innovation. And if clients understand the value that we're bringing with those two things, culture is such an interesting one where, the most common thing I hear when I talk to peers at different companies, it's like, well, how do you attract the great talent? How do you keep it? And it's like, well, that's where the investment in culture comes to play. It's like in this industry, you're going to have the best community in the world, but you don't have the right people running it. You're not going to have the results. It's going to be brutal. It's always going to be noisy and painful. And so that investment in the culture is very germane to our strategy of how we're able to perform. So that culture of high performance and that that culture where we do genuinely care about our people, I do think is a huge part of what's led to our success. And on the innovation side, we're not afraid to take these bold moves. We're not afraid to move into how we leverage technology, how we leverage data, how we have gone down the centralization path, like all of those things in this changing dynamic where, payroll's going up and insurance is going up. It's like, all right, well, we have to work together to figure out how do we still deliver a very high quality, if not higher quality, service, but without having these ever expanding operational expenses. And so in those two areas, it's like that's been very much a focus. And then that same care that our company and our leaders have for our people comes down to caring about our clients too. It's, do we have the urgency when there's challenges? Are we building the relationships with them so that they understand that we understand their needs and we're working together to achieve their objectives as well? And so I think that all comes together and has led to a huge part of our success and our ability to grow.
Well said. I happen to agree with you. I'm biased, I think, but I think culture setting is part of a core strategy, right? It may not be one of the 5 P's of marketing, right? Pricing, positioning, placement, et cetera, but it can enable and unlock a lot of the innovation that can drive growth. And
Absolutely.
That's neat to hear that it's so impactful in your growth at Cardinal. Right. And then getting back to multifamily, after 8.5 years at RevGen, a consulting firm, you went to Cardinal. And could you tell us what drew you to come back to the multifamily industry? And by the way, I mentioned this to you before, but you are the first boomerang on the show, and maybe the exception to the rule that once you find multifamily, you never leave it, which a lot of people say. But you did leave it, but then you came back. So maybe you're kind of underscoring the point more than providing an exception. But what made you interested in coming back to the industry, and then Cardinal in particular?
Yeah, I think for me, I haven't had a singular industry focus throughout my whole career, right? More of the common thread has been more on, call it, leveraging technology for a big business transformation. That's really been the common thread throughout my career. So it wasn't necessarily that I was looking to, hey, how do I get back into multifamily? It was more about the culture here. So specifically Alex O'Brien, who's our CEO, what I found was, I'd had the opportunity through consulting to see a lot of different companies. And while I loved all the business centers that I got a chance to work with and just some amazing people and some great lessons learned, it never really hit a company that had an overall culture that I was like, oh, I really want to be a part of this kind of broader culture that's being driven here at Cardinal. And what I found here was it was about kind of the boldness of wanting to do something truly exceptional and taking bold risks and, wanting to be on the leading edge as far as how do we use technology to elevate the customer experience and really making some big pivots in the way that we're operating and how we use data and all those pieces. So that was really the drawback in. So it wasn't necessarily, if I'm going to be totally honest, this drive to be, I specifically want to be part of multifamily housing, but it was more of, hey, what an interesting way that Cardinal was thinking about leveraging technology and data and how thought about that, not just from a cost savings perspective, but really about how we, really drive that resident experience using all that technology has to offer today. And so that was really what it was about, where what an amazing opportunity to be able to take that and really propel our industry and our company forward.
Let's talk a minute about culture, because I'm a big fan of building intentional culture. It sounds like that's what really drew you to Cardinal. How do you see your role now as Chief Operating Officer in terms of shaping the culture or reinforcing it?
Yeah, I think it's incumbent on all the leaders of any organization. So, I mean, we talk a ton about culture. If you think about, well, when we talk about Cardinal, we say, what is our secret sauce? What do we do that's different than any other companies, and what's going to lead us to success? We really look at it as a combination of culture as well as our drive to innovation and looking at that as an opportunity versus a threat. And when it comes to culture, I mean, it's funny. Everybody has the values. Everybody has their company mission. But what I've seen is like when you have a delta between what you say you want to do and what you're willing to do, that's where things get awry, and that's where expectations get awry and team members feel, unhappy. But we're very committed to, we're not perfect by any stretch, nor am I perfect, right? But it's like we know what we want, who we want to be, and really just work hard to drive towards that and be intellectually honest and humble when things go awry. And hey, we wanted to be, working towards this culturally and understand that, hey, unintentionally something we're doing maybe is getting in the way of that. And how do we just acknowledge that and move forward there? So I think there's a lot to it's every interaction. What behaviors are we highlighting? What behaviors are we rewarding? What are we calling out when there's issues? How do we handle when there's failures? There's inevitably going to be failures. And it's, well, how do we show up when that happens, right? And how do we take accountability and make it safe for folks to understand the best path to success is to own those mistakes and learn from them and acknowledge them and go forward. So we spent a lot of time talking about culture, and it's been an interesting journey through COVID and post-COVID, and everybody's working through. I think Cardinal always had such a strong culture, and it's been really interesting to work through the dynamics now in today's world where things changed really quickly, and I would say much more quickly than in any other time in my professional history, just through this like immediate shift to everybody's working from home and no choice, right, for months, and then how we've kind of been evolving ever since then. So a lot to navigate there for companies as far as the expectations of how we support our team members. And yeah, it's been a great learning journey. And it all comes down to, at least in my opinion, that from the start, is there an authentic care for people? And if there's not, then it's really hard to make the right decisions when that's not at the core of, what people believe and what people at the top believe. Because if people at the top don't believe it, you'll have little pockets and departments that are doing great things, but the whole org won't be moving in that direction unless the top leadership really, truly has that authentic care and rewards that behavior in their leaders.
Well said. I absolutely agree. Culture comes from the top down, and I've seen it, I think, on both sides now, both as a early employee at other people's companies, now at my own company. It's a little unsettling in a way, just how much influence the C-suite has on culture, because you have to really be thoughtful and intentional, because even small things could have reverberations. When you think about Cardinal's culture and what truly sets it apart, does it boil down to simply the care for people, or maybe is there another element or two that in conjunction with that has especially driven so much growth for Cardinal over the years?
Yeah, I mean, the Alex O'Brien, our CEO, his kind of starting point was always, if you take care of your team members, they're going to take care of your residents and your clients. So it kind of starts there, where it's, hey, that's always been a huge part of, just his day to day. And I think that just permeates the organization. And so our company mission is to be the best place to work in any industry for anyone, so we can create communities where residents thrive. And that really is the center. And so even as we look at, the different business decisions we make, and there's always great conversation of, how if people feel like they're being held accountable, and they're like, but we're supposed to be a great place to work. And if, yes, those two things are true, right? It doesn't mean everybody gets to just do whatever they want, play ping pong all day. If that's not what that means, right? What it means to have a great culture, it's that we're a strong team that shows up for each other, that holds ourselves to high standards so we can take care of our residents. And we do have these great places to live. We love those stories of people going above and beyond and, making things right when things go awry. Those are the things that really matter. And just a lot of it just comes down to just showing up and caring about what we're doing for each other and what we're doing for our residents.
Very well said. And that was a great mission statement, by the way. I like, even though it's on the longer side, I think it's important to, list out how that all works, right? How you go from A to Z. Well said. Let's shift a little bit. I want to get into a fun topic that I know we talked about in the pre-show, AI. With your seat at Cardinal as Chief Operating Officer, and especially with your prior role as Chief Technology Officer, I know that you have some views and some vision for how AI can positively impact our industry. There's so much here to unpack, so we won't be ambitious to cover it in this episode, but maybe at a high level, what would you share as some near-term changes the industry can expect to see driven by AI?
I'm super excited about the opportunity that AI brings our industry. I look at, if you just take a step back and you look at how we operate, how do we, how many people do we need on site? What are they doing? So much of our team's time, they're spent behind the desk, in a computer, on the phone. And that was just because that was required for, the work that had to be done. And all we've really done over the last probably 2 decades is just layer on more and more technology, which is great. It lets us operate at scale, but it's actually really complex for the people on site that are trying to, we're like, hey, take care of the residents. They're like, great, but I have 8,000 invoices and POs to enter, and I have to do my reclasses. And there's just so much work that's administrative that we've added on in order to operate at scale, right? It's really different if you own a single family home, you're renting out. There's a lot different administrative burden as you start to get to scale. So when I think about what AI can do for us, to me, this is a total game changer as far as how do we automate all of those administrative things, and even not just administrative things, but like the entire workflows, I think, are on the cusp of changing. And I don't think we've gotten there yet. I'm like chomping at the bit, waiting for more to come from an advancements perspective on some of the core operating processes. But what AI can do, we have so much that still basically was like a paper process that went to like green screen technology. That's great. It's on the web, so it's like a little more user friendly, but a lot of those processes are still very manual, very labor intensive, very much, I submitted it and somebody else can see it and approve it. And it's holy smokes. It's all just so manual. So when you think about what AI can do and really automate as much of that as possible, what it'll lead to, it's way more consistent experiences for our residents, yes, we'll continue to train for fair housing, but if the technology is doing a bulk of it, it's like we know we're providing consistent responses and communications and pricing and all of those pieces if we can leverage AI for all of that. And so we've started by targeting where there's some good point solutions that are built out as far as some of the resident communications and prospect communications, and it's great, right? We love the example of, as a prospect can text us at 11 o'clock at night and get an immediate answer because the AI is able to do that, has access to the pricing and availability, and can schedule a tour. So to me, it's really exciting because I think if you look at some of the different technology advancements over the years that big companies have undergone, it's all right, the old phone trees and the automated systems that came out 20 years ago, it's okay, those were great for reducing operating expenses, but it was a terrible customer experience. Whereas now with AI, it's like, great, you get some of those operational efficiencies, but it's a way better experience just because of the availability and the quality that the AI can do and how it can interact with our customers. So I'm super excited. There's certainly existential threats and bigger problems, kind of globally that we as a society are going to have to work through. But in a kind of micro business perspective, there's a ton that this will transform. So I think the way that our people are doing their work today is going to be dramatically different in just, another year or two as far as what are the skills they need and what are they doing all day versus today where they're kind of trapped behind the desk quite a bit.
I recall from conversations with your team, Will Conroy, who was my operations contact, and others, Cardinal has for a long time had a very innovative approach to the way that regions are managed in terms of, you don't have a traditional regional property manager position. There's like certain regional heads of different functions. And I always found that very interesting and clever because, like you said, if you have a job, like a function, but your job also includes something completely different, you're context switching constantly. And I think in my own building that I happen to live in, I know that the leasing agent is also handling all invoicing and doing a million things, right? It's interesting that you all have found those efficiencies early, even before AI. I'm excited to see how Cardinal, and I see you guys as one of the early innovators and adopters in the industry, how you will leverage AI to further enhance the specialization that I'm sure we need and with the on-site teams.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right with that term. I mean, that's how we've been addressing it. It is about the specialization and the centralization. So it's all right, we ask, that's the other thing, right? Everybody on site is an expert in 47 different things, right? Mm-hmm. So that's super hard. And in general, people are good at a handful of related things and not great at the other pieces. So if what we want is we want our on-site team to be very focused on creating this sense of belonging for our residents, do I also want them to be great at invoices? All right, I'd rather they're really great at taking care of their residents and have empathy and can problem solve when something, out of the ordinary happens where, property management, it's like, well, somebody drove into the side of the building. It's all right. There's not a lot of SOPs for that. We need people that can work through problems and understand how to problem solve. And yeah, it's about the specialization. So how do we pull that out? And I do think if we were to start this industry today versus 30 years ago, it's like we would do it totally different because we can do so many different things because of technology remotely or from a central place. So it just creates a whole different opportunity of how do we define operations today, given everything that's available to us.
Last question on AI. It seems to me, and I'm not on the operating side, but I have a lot of conversations with vendors, that companies usually become committed to one out of maybe three options for a property management system of the big players, right? And there's more than three, but there are some behemoths. Is AI just going to be theirs to lose because they already have the hooks into their clients? Or can you see a completely new upstart gaining quick traction and kind of somehow edging their way into a space that has been historically pretty hard to disrupt?
Yeah, I mean, the switching costs are high today, right? So I think to me, it all depends on how fast these big players move. I think there's no industry that's safe just because you're an incumbent. I think AI really speeds up the software delivery. So even 3 years ago, it's like, how long would it take for somebody else to stand up a new PMS that was slightly better? It's like, it's going to take years, right, to get to kind of that stable tipping point of what's required. I think the time or the speed to delivery is going to be much shorter. And so I do think if those big players don't move quickly to really take some big steps forward as far as being able to leverage AI and rethink their workflows, then I do think they're creating an opportunity for somebody, a smaller upstart, to come in and kind of be the Uber to the taxi drivers. Yeah, that's typically when there's disruption. It's like when the big players that have all the legacy infrastructure are slow to move. It's like, well, that's definitely creating an opportunity. And in the past, the switching costs were so high, but AI could really speed that up too, right? So some of those big moats that used to be, I do think AI is going to tear those down. So we'll depend on who actually is going to make those investments to make some bigger leaps forward, which will be interesting because from a change management perspective, people really get wedded to like existing infrastructure and the ways that we've always done it. So I definitely think there's a big risk in probably every industry as far as those big incumbents if they don't move quickly into being able to leverage AI.
Well said. It'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out in the next few years with AI. I think still at an inflection point. It seems like Gen AI is now all the talk, and that wasn't even really a term when ChatGPT first came out. It was all LLM. Well, now it's hard to keep up with all the innovations. Let's shift a little bit back to multifamily excellence, and focus on this show is about career advancement, development, leadership, and leadership advice to up and coming, whether they're individual contributors or managing for the first time or leading. What advice would you give our audience in multifamily about improving their own ability to lead?
Yeah, I would say there's probably a couple of different areas that I would recommend. So one, I'll just start with relationships. So taking the time to build that professional network, whether it's people you're directly working with, up the chain, peers, and other departments. Some of the people that I'm, still close to this day weren't necessarily my direct team lead in the past, but they're people I worked closely with that I really respect their opinion. And the ability to just have some unstructured time, talking shop, understanding, what different departments are thinking about, what broader business objectives are. I think we as humans are terrible at explaining like the why behind what we're asking people to do. And the more time you can spend with other people, especially that are maybe a level or two up from you and understanding their vantage point and what they're thinking about, that just only helps you in all the little tiny decisions you make every day to better align to where the company is going. And so one is just life is more exciting when you have like trust and nice relationships with the people you're working with. But two, I think it just helps you out immensely in your career if you actually invest that time and don't kind of convince yourself like, I don't have time to do that. I just have to work. And it's yes, but think about this as an investment in your performance and not only in the today, but for the future as well. So that would certainly be an area that I would highly, highly recommend. Two, I'd say, as a person that spent my entire career probably trying to convince others to get on board with new things that we're doing. And I think it's always interesting. There's always two different kinds. There's more than two, but there's often kind of this spectrum of how people respond when there's new things that are getting asked of you. And so a lot of times it's fear, right? So something new, your company's coming down, wants you to do something in a new way. And it's easy to look at it from a fear perspective of, but I learned how to do it this way. So I'm going to hang on to this and really fight against it. And I think that inevitably that really hurts your own career growth, right? If you can understand the why behind what you're getting asked to do and not just take it and be like, I drank the Kool-Aid, I'm just going to push this even if it doesn't work. But I do think that there's huge value in the people that understand it, dig in, and then they ask the right questions or they bring the right challenges and say, okay, this works in these 7 ways. These 3 things are like really hurting us. And so the leaders that are able to show that they're thinking it through and problem solving and bringing real challenges versus, just like it doesn't work and throwing up your hands and fighting it. I think those are people that are highly valuable, especially right now where things are changing at a very rapid pace. Those to me are hugely valuable people to continue to progress into leadership positions because what I know is they're going to work towards the solution. I don't want you to just tell me it's all working. Like I want us to actually work together to make sure that we get the last, few inches or the last nuances that maybe are different about your particular communities or needs or whatever the case may be. So I'd say that would be the other areas, like really embracing change, but not in a just, kind of blind way. It's really just being a partner in pushing out that change and strengthening that change to make it what the company is trying to achieve.
Well said. Thanks for the advice. Do you have a leadership book recommendation you'd like to share?
So I love reading, and so I'll have a little recency bias on this, but one that I really, really liked was Howard Schultz's book, who is the CEO and founder of Starbucks, which now I'm blanking on the name of it, but it was, but anyway, Howard Schultz, if you look that up, you'll see it. Sure. But what I really liked about his book is I saw a lot of parallels to the multifamily industry just because they're very similar where they're picking sites that they think are going to have the right traffic and they're training, this huge array of team members in the field, right? And so how they go about that as far as staying true to the core of their mission and what they're trying to do. And even from a revenue perspective of staying focused on the coffee experience versus, stuffed animals that they're selling in the store or whatever the case may be. But that book that I recently read, I just took a lot of interesting takeaways from as far as, again, the parallels to our industry. But I thought that was a great book for multifamily. We're such a people-reliant business, right? At the end of the day, It's like we're in people's homes, right? That's such a personal thing. And if we don't have the right people that care about taking care of the residents, it's very different than if we were selling telecom services or whatever the case may be. It's a very emotional experience. So that's where I think culture is even more important in multifamily than maybe some other industries. I think it matters in every industry, but particularly people's homes. It's got to get that right.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining the show. If anybody would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, LinkedIn. That's probably the social media I'm on the most. So happy to connect.
All right. Cara, thank you again. And have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Multifamily Excellence, brought to you by With Me. With Me is making lives better every day through convenient, technology-enabled amenities for the multifamily industry and beyond. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.